Perfect. Okay, great. So first of all, thank you so much to the organizers and especially to Ilya for having me. And I apologize that I cannot be there in person. And it's really a great pleasure and honor to be a part of the conference for the second time. It's a great success, and I learn a lot. And I would just jump into the first part of the presentation, which, as you mentioned, I will share with Professor Strauss. And we are so happy to do that and really to share the concept of clinical longevity medicine and also practical pathways and practical processes which have been done and are still being developed in the Shiva Longevity Center in Tel Aviv. So without further ado, I will just start very briefly on reminding about the definitions on longevity medicine, and this will give a gate opener to the further presentation. So in early 2020s, longevity medicine for the first time was mentioned in a publication that was actually trying to focus on saying what is longevity medicine, and in that definition, it was also capturing what is it using in order to guide patients and be in the clinic. So at that point of time, we said longevity medicine is a branch of precision medicine. It is specifically focusing on AI, empowered health span and lifespan. So at this point of time already it said both health span and lifespan are in the focus. This definition has evolved, and hopefully a paper will come out soon in the same journal from the Healthy Longevity Medicine Society, which convened in 2022 and said, right, we have to shift from longevity medicine to healthy longevity medicine for the purpose of saying that we are really focusing on health span. We didn't want to call it health span medicine because it's still longevity medicine, but it's all about optimizing health span, focusing on optimal ranges, developing ranges that are optimal for an individual and then also for cohorts. And doing that by targeting age-related processes, meaning using the great discoveries in neuroscience that we have, and also the AI and computational science to really also model it into trajectories, and to do that along the lifespan. What is probably missing and is coming into it is that it also has to be longitudinal with the flexibility to adjust as the lifespan progresses. And secondly, also in terms of the thresholds of the lifespan and health span, which I will refer to just in a moment. So that's us, that's the Healthy Longevity Medicine Society. And some of the points that are encaptured in the mission and vision, the society, are hopefully helpful and crucial for the field. Some of them, such as setting up publicly funded hospitals and centers of longevity, that is something that Professor Strauss will go into the great detail, because we have an actual example how it is already done and existing and now just developing. But some of the things that the society is doing is also creating guidelines and standards and recommendations. And hopefully also very soon we can show it to the public that just now one of the governments in the world has implemented into their policies actual standards and golden standards of longevity medicine for the accreditation of longevity clinics, for the accreditation of physicians, and also for the public support of longevity medicine efforts in a country. So I think those very, very strong, powerful steps and movements are really game changers, moving from only the bench or also moving only from the private sector, which is of course very important, necessary, absolutely, we collaborate closely, but it's also very important to be in a setting that is public, academic, and yet clinical. So we have those three places that right now are existing, or each of them is running in a different place, but also this will be shown by Professor Strauss in a great detail what exactly those three centers are doing, but we are collaborating with Mayo Clinic, with the Alexandra Hospital in the US, and with our center at Shiba to really have the exchange, the real platform that we need as doctors to discuss our patients, to discuss our protocols, to discuss the processes and the upcoming results. But all of this is only possible if we also implement AI into that game. And that is something that, of course, in the clinical academic setting is still very, very immature and preliminary, yet it is existing. And those steps are also very important in order to shift the paradigm and to actually have a data lake of all those clinical data, to also have a platform that is integrated with the EHR, so that as we are collecting the data longitudinally in longevity medicine of the cohort of so-called healthy patients and diagnosing them with the longevity diagnostics to finally also identify the right biomarkers of aging, we need to have this platform in order then to integrate also the data from the sick care. And only this way we can have this reciprocal mutual beneficiation of both sides. Why do we do that? We always say we want to close the health span and lifespan gap. We know this one is very difficult, expensive, and burdensome, and that's one of the goals. However, what we are often missing is that we do not only want to close the horizontal kind of a path of health span and lifespan. There is a gap, and those years are burdensome, but we also need to understand that the health span threshold will be different for different patients. And when we say we want to have longevity medicine for all, we do not only focus on having it on specific populations, specific ethnicities, specific sex and genders, but also in healthy and unhealthy patients. So yet another thing we are doing now, also in the society, in the working group, is to identify who is a longevity medicine population. And after, of course, it's only recommendation, expert-based recommendation, nevertheless, we came up with the point that, in fact, pretty much almost everybody, besides our very terminal palliative patients, are actually included in that setting, including, of course, pediatric patients, and of course, even almost like we call it the preconception longevity approach. So this type of a threshold will be different. So very clearly, a health span goal of a cancer patient, cancer survivor, it will be very different than a person who is athletic and is very young and did not have any comorbidity yet in his or her life. But this type of factor that will also be changing along the lifespan needs to be calculated into the algorithm. And that's pretty much only possible already with large language models and newly also with quantum, because without that, we cannot really then also go from this large modeling to a granular question, such as which protein will be the best for a specific target. But when we take a step aside, we still need to go to the basics, because without good basics, we cannot do nothing. So setting up diagnostic and monitoring processes that, of course, will have some sort of flexibility in each of the centers is very, very important. That's one of the publications which we have published, and Professor Strauss will explain it a bit more. But another thing that we want to take from those type of protocols, to take from this side of senior doctors practicing in a department, is really to give further. So our experience also in our center was, without junior doctors, we can't move forward, we can't grow, we can't do nothing. And so we were very blessed that we have really tremendous talent in our center, from senior to junior doctors. But some of the things that were also done on top of that, right, on the educational part, is Longevity Education Hub, which you might know, and some of the academic centers are very close friends also of the Longevity Nation, including ILIA. And this is the only CME accredited course that was also already implemented in the NHS system already 3 years ago. But how it developed now, it developed to a course that is globally spread and trained over 10,000 physicians. National chapters have been built. Some countries really prefer to learn in their own language, and it was not so easy. And finally, the big achievement was that the longevity medicine course curriculum is integrated already in the university in Indonesia in the core medical curriculum, which might sound as something small, but it's actually quite big. So imagine you're a doctor, or imagine you yourself as a doctor. If we have doctors in the audience, you actually study, and within your courses of cardiology, oncology, endocrinology, forensic medicine, pathology, you have a part that is dedicated to longevity medicine, not a trivial part, actually several hours. So altogether 480 hours spread over 6 years. That's pretty amazing. And that is spreading. And of course, it was a lot of work, 2 years of very heavy work, to adjust such kind of curriculum, but it's done. And also, this type of education is now being brought to the doctors in their internship and residency. So doctors who have finished their medical school but are now training clinically. And Lithuanian University of Health and Science is the first one that is actually implementing it for family physicians, which at the end of the day have biggest and the closest contact with their patients. So those developments are happening, and we should not forget that, of course, it's very important to train the doctors across the entire path of the doctors, but also people who are involved at large in such a center, which of course spread towards therapists, psychologists, nutritionists, physiotherapists, of course, people who are involved in research, which is so super, super important, and of course, all the other people who are involved as healthcare professionals, so also neuropsychologists and nurses and so on. So those are some of the things that we are doing, and it's very important because people in an academic setting, if they work in a hospital where they clearly every day also have the ability to talk to people who see sick patients, them themselves partially also sometimes work in the sick care setting. We all have one of our legs or our fingers still in the sick care setting. And it's very important for us because the reactive medicine is important and is there to stay. We have to react to the disease and treat it. But it's also very important to have knowledge what's actually going on in prevention. Preventative task force are growing and developing. And yet to see the importance of longevity diagnostic being integrated into all this and then interventions based on that. And only through that, actually being within a center that is academic, talking to people, working with people, leaders of the departments, it was possible to really exchange the idea of what longevity medicine is and is not, and then to work together and to learn from the sick care and implement the longevity path so that we don't only bring the patient from their biological age that they are at now compared to their chronological age with interventions towards optimized biological age and optimally always keeping them at the so-called IPP, the individual peak performance level, using all the data of longevity diagnostics that we have, and of course, generative AI, deep neuronal network, and now also other large language models that we can have in order to have the trajectories. Simply said, what is the biological age? What's the optimal biological age? What are the oscillations within the day, within the month? And ultimately, what is the pace of aging? Because it's great to have trends, but it's much more important to have the pace right there. And that's why we are doing diagnostics and interventions. And this is very important to identify biomarkers of human aging. No restoration of biological age can happen without those. And also, we cannot move forward the needle without having the biomarkers. And you know probably that we have two very large biomarkers of aging consortia, one huge one in China for Asia, and one at Harvard. And what colleagues are doing there is so amazing and very, very great publications, which I recommend you to read. But what is very needed is the clinical validation of those in cohorts that are outside of only controlled randomized clinical trials, but also the real world population that is coming to the clinic. And secondly, also to bring it to the public health, why don't we have a screening of biological age, for example, at some point of time, just aside of mammography or PSA measurement? And some of the biomarkers have been already established very long time ago, usually in clusters, by systems, by organs, by cellular functions, by some of the functions of the body, such as memory, performance, and so on. And those panels are actually not new, as I mentioned. Some of those have been proposed a while ago. However, it was always very difficult and challenging to aggregate them and to easily find them, and to move away from using only one linear or only selected two-dimensional markers. And that is now finally possible with AI. So right now, we can really use those clusters and go very, very deeply into those that are validated for diseases, those that are not validated at all, and to cluster them together. And so, for example, Biomarker of Aging Consortium made it also very, very clear that those markers that have been established before are a part of that, and that we have to integrate more markers. And those more additional markers are mostly digital. So all of our wearables, continuous measurements, and so on, those probably will have a role just aside, like same level, side by side to laboratory testing or omics. And interestingly, or very importantly, diseases and aging of course, they go hand in hand. And some of the biomarkers of aging have been proposed based on different diseases, mostly cancer, simply because cancer has the most paralleled pathways. So tumorigenesis and aging have they share a lot of pathways, and also because we know that there is this point, we know that there is this one destabilizing event on the trajectory of a patient that can bring a patient from being apparently healthy to frail. And this destabilizing event in oncology is very clear. Very often it's chemotherapy or radiotherapy. And to know when is exactly this point of being easily turned with an event towards frailty is very important to make decisions, for example, in terms of therapies. Again, cancer patients are just one example, but very important example, because as we age, we will have more and more cancer patients. And as we try to prolong life, we will also see more and more cancer. So those are those few things that have been established. And breast cancer was also one of a very good examples where methylation played a good role. But again, that's not enough. And so I will skip this part to go to Professor Strauss. What do we want to do with that? The thing that we want to do with all those biomarkers and sifting through them and validating them is to actually then be able to say which of the interventions are or are not helpful, and when and for whom. Thank you. With that, I will close.
Thank you very much, Eva.